Welcome to the Coach Toolbox. I'm your host, Dr. Ajay Nangalia, a leadership coach and counselor. This channel supports your professional and personal development as a leader with research-based and practice-focused learning. And we bring you the best career and life advice from guests who've been there and done that successfully. And now, our session today. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this conversation on executive presence. Executive presence. Now, this is an elusive concept. We know of it. We know it when we see it, but we really find it difficult to grasp it in a way that we can actually use it. But not for longer. Ram Kumar Narayan is there with us to talk about executive presence. Now, Ram is currently Vice President and Managing Site Director R&D at VMware India. And prior to joining VMware, he served in global leadership positions at eBay, Yahoo, and Microsoft. Ram holds a B in Mechanical Engineering from Anna University and an MS in Mechanical Engineering and an MBA from University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. So, Ram, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
So one of the requirements for almost any senior level promotion or recruitment is this concept of executive presence. We know it when we see it, when it's there, and leaders aspiring to senior roles are told that you must develop executive presence if you want to go higher. Yet no one seems very sure in terms of what it is and how it can be developed. So leaders are left at a loss. So let's start by, please tell us briefly, what is executive presence?
Yeah. It's a great question. And, it's something that I have struggled with over the course of my career, which spans about 30 plus years. And people have told me exactly that, right? You've got to develop exec presence. And if you look at some job descriptions, it'll say, exec presence required. And you look at it and go, I'm not sure what this is. But if I synthesize my learnings over the last 30 years, as I said, I think it comes down to one very simple factor. How do you build trust and confidence of yourself and somebody else, right? So it's less about the exec. I think to me, a lot of people get wound around the fact that, it's about going and talking to the CEO of the company or somebody in the C-suite. It's really not that. I think it comes down to saying, look, do I have the ability to build trust and confidence in somebody else? And then can I create trust and confidence in myself for somebody else, right? I mean, it's about the individual to a large extent. And, I like to say that, look, there is an ABC to it, which is, one is attitude. You bring a positive attitude to the table every single time. I think that gets recognized very quickly. I mean, we all know those people who bring that attitude to the table, right? I mean, they walk into a room and suddenly that you feel their presence. And it doesn't need to be somebody with a title. It really is about the individual, right? They do that. They have a very positive attitude. And the corollary to that is you can also tell when somebody doesn't have a great attitude. Who's rent seeking in a lot of ways, all the time, right? I mean, he was looking for somebody else to do stuff for them. What's in it for me is the attitude. And that also becomes very clear very quickly. Second, I would say is behavioral. How do you behave? How do you behave in the presence of others? Are you inclusive? Are you respectful? Right? Are you composed? There's a set of factors, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So second is behavioral to a large extent. And the third is credibility. Mm-hmm. Are you bringing credibility to the table? Can people, when you talk about things, will people sit up and listen to you because you're credible? And how do you build credibility, right? Over time. And a lot of that is about, saying what you say you're going to get done and then following it up. And if you can't get it done, be truthful about it, right? I mean, you bring, a transparency and truthfulness and honesty to the table. So I think credibility is the third piece. So that's the ABC. And I would say there's a set of other, sub-characteristics that come up, right? So that, to me, like I said, just to reiterate, building trust and confidence is the number one thing from an exec presence perspective.
So trust and confidence, and you do that by looking at the ABC
yes.
of executive presence. So, okay, now for a change, I'm beginning to understand it. And as an executive coach, I'm really excited about it because it gives me a framework to start my conversation with clients in terms of, okay, if you want to develop executive presence, here is a roadmap that we can start working towards. So I think that's very, very helpful. So give us some examples of leaders who have this, or what does a leader who has, what does he or she look like?
Yeah. So I think, like I said, there are some sub-characteristics to define this framework, right? One they tend to be quite charismatic. And charismatic, not in a, there are some, based on, if you just look at something like Myers-Briggs, right? There are people who are, who are not necessarily your most effervescent and bubbly people out there, but who can really be charismatic, right? They can be, of any type, but when they come into a presence of others, they can be very charismatic. They can control a conversation. They can hold the audience to a large extent because of what they bring to the table, right? So charisma is a very important piece, and developing charisma. Not everybody is born with it. For some people are lucky, right? They're just born with great charisma, but many of us have to work at it, right? I mean, it takes years of practice to get there. Second is, like I said, they're very composed, in stressful scenarios. So when you're in their presence, you feel calm, right? You have your anxieties, they're very good at managing their anxieties and being composed. Third is they're very optimistic. They feel that there is more to be done. There's things can be achieved, in spite of, the darkest hour, right? There are some examples of watching this Netflix thing the other day about Winston Churchill. He had his own flaws, but he was an optimistic person. I mean, the Battle of Britain is an extremely optimistic scenario, right? And you've seen this over the years. I mean, people, in the darkest hour, they tend to be the bright light, right? That guides everybody else. Third is they're very authentic. I mean, you don't have people who are different in private and different in public. I mean, they bring their authenticity to the table. You may not agree with them every time, which is okay, but they're very authentic. I mean, you don't find, there's no duplicity in their behaviors to a large extent, right? They are who they are. And they're not afraid to say it. And third, and the other few things are like, they're humble. You think humility plays a big role in that piece, saying that I don't know. I mean, even, if you're a person who's starting out their careers and they are in the presence of their, their execs, and they're presenting something and their question comes up. Now, it's very easy to sniff out the fact that somebody is trying to make up a story versus, who genuinely says, hey, I don't know. I didn't think about it. Let me come back to you, right? And then follows up and comes back. I think, people, that's part of humility, is to say, look, I don't know. Let me learn, right? Or the reverse, where you should feel humble enough to say, look, to a person who is more junior to you or whatever, and say, look, I don't know. Teach me. I'm willing to learn. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Right? Draw the influence. And grateful, right? I think gratefulness plays a big role, saying thank you to others, irrespective of who they are. There's sometimes, I've seen some of these things where people will deliberately conduct an interview at a restaurant and see how the candidate behaves with people who are working in the restaurant, right? How do you treat them? And just to see, what is the type of a person they are, right? And I think gratefulness plays a big role. A couple of other factors. Patient. I think they let things develop, right? In spite of their own anxiety to get things done, they are very good at being patient with others and helping draw them into a conclusion, right? Kind of leading them. I think the 12 Good Men, the movie, is actually about patience, if you think about it. It's about influence and negotiation, true. But if you think about the movie, it's really about patience. It's about that one person who's patiently kind of chipping away at what their point of view is and getting others to line up behind. And then last but not least is value driven. I think their values are very, very important to be able to others. I think you build a lot of credibility by saying, these are my values and I live by them. And I think in times like these, where everybody is struggling to figure out what to do, I think you naturally gravitate towards those people who are very value driven or values.
So true. So true. So we have a very comprehensive list. I have actually captured 8 points: charismatic, composed, optimistic, authentic, humble, grateful, patient, and value driven. So all these words are there, but how does it benefit an organization? Does it really impact leadership? Is it nuts and bolts contribution to the numbers of an organization?
Right. No, absolutely. And I think, the way I look at it is, it starts with an individual, right? An organization is a collection of people at the end of the day, right? And if you have the right kind of people coming together and the diversity of that, and you're able to harness it, I think those are the kind of organizations that do extremely well, right? I mean, that's why diversity and inclusion is such an important aspect, of how companies are thinking about how to bring this together. because diversity, and a lot of people devolve it to a gender-based or other characteristics. But it's really, in the way here's the way I think about it. Okay, and this is driven by personal experience. So I speak from personal experience, and not necessarily others may have other experiences, but I'll speak from my personal experience. So the way I think about this is, like I said, it's about individual. So what I'm going to talk about is really about an individual and how they can manage themselves, right, to a large extent. So first of all, I think it's about creating a brand you. And what does that mean, right? To me, the brand you is the fact that, all the things that I mentioned as characteristics, how does it manifest itself in you? And hence, you're building a presence for yourself, right? And this is not something that needs to happen after 30 years. I mean, I learned this. If I roll back to the young me, I would imbibe some of these early on so that actually, I can get ahead of the curve. But it took me a while. First of all, I think the fact that you're a sum total of your experiences, and every person's experience is unique, right? But the question is, how are you weaving those fabrics of not only your experience, but the experiences of you interacting with others? How have you imbibed it? And how are you weaving it into yourself? Okay. It's like a tapestry, right? Every tapestry is different because, it depends on how the weaver kind of weaves it and what experiences what threads that they have with them. So I think to me, it's that's one, right? Second is curiosity and constant learning. I mean, there's no substitute for that. Every morning, if you don't wake up and say, what don't I know today and what can I pick up, right? And from whom? It doesn't need to be with somebody with more knowledge. It can be somebody with an interaction that you have. So I think, every day and the curiosity, ask more, ask the next level of questions. Why, how, the humility plays there. But so like I was saying, curiosity and learning, constant learning is a very important trait. I mean, it doesn't need to be developed, like I said, later in life. It's something that you learn constantly. It starts very early, right? And that mindset of saying, what do I need to learn more, and being open to, learning. Third is, learning is great. You can keep going learning. I mean, nowadays there's no dearth of learning, right? I mean, you open up your social media on a daily basis. There's just a ton of stuff flowing at you. But absolutely. I think it's also important while you're learning is to say, where am I building depth of understanding? And what is relevant to me, right? And all of us, do a plethora of things during our careers, right? But at the same time, every job requires a level of understanding and a building of depth in the industry that you're working in, the job that you have, the function that you have, etc. Because that accrues towards how you can talk about things more interestingly and building a brand, right? Because why would others listen to you? Because you bring that experience, the stories you can tell, right? Based on the experiences you have. The most interesting person is those who tell stories and not gives you, prescription, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So where does that lead to? At the end of the day, that leads to getting things done. That's what, you can't forget, right? At the end of the day, you're there to deliver. A lot of times, people come to me for, career advice, and they display some of these characteristics, right? They're very good at, they're very good at meeting people. They build networks. They're very curious. They keep wanting to learn all the time. All that stuff is great, right? But when you ask them, what have you done? What is it that you're most proud of that you did in the last, pick your favorite time frame, right? 6 months, 1 year, 3 weeks, whatever it is. Nothing comes back. And then they wonder why, their bosses are mad at them, that they're constantly all over the place and not getting things done. So I think, to me, getting things done is the license that you get to go do all the other things, right? At the end of the day, a job is about getting something done. They've employed you for something, right? It doesn't need you could be self-employed. But if you don't have a set of deliverables that you're thinking about, execution, I think execution is the pay to play, right? You do that, you get to do other things. It's a reward mechanism to a large extent. You can't just do all the other things and say, I'm not going to get my day job done. That doesn't work. And to me, part of this is people value the diversity and the experience you bring. But at the end of the day, they also want to know what is it that you're getting it done and how are you going to get it done, right? So you need to have a plan. So getting things done is a very important piece to this whole thing, right? That's what wraps it around and brings it to the fore. And of course, how you get it done is also important. It's not about just delivering. It's also about the quality and the thought process behind it and all of that, because that helps build the trust and confidence. I mean, I don't want to forget the early thing that we started with. It's about building trust and confidence. This builds that, right? Then all this is great. You're learning, you're getting things done, you've built depth of understanding, all that stuff. How do others find out? How do you communicate? And I think the ability to communicate effectively is very, very important. And that's something that, I have had to work in my career quite hard. When I first started, it was very difficult for me to get in front of an audience. I would just freeze up. It did not come naturally, right?
Yeah.
And it has taken me a fair amount of time to get better at it, work at it. And I mean, there are people who are very gifted at communication. You know who they
Sure.
are. When they talk
Yeah.
to. But there are others. When you look behind the scenes, they've had to work really hard, and they've had to put in a lot of effort and keep at it in order to get there, right? And so I think effective communication, because what does that do for you? It enables you to tie up all those other things I talked about and be able to bring it to the fore, right? And it doesn't need to be just, oral communication. It's written communication. It's also nonverbal communication. And, people don't, it becomes even more important in the current scenario. As you and I were chatting offline, when we get on these video calls, right?
Oh, yes.
And everybody's working from home, and everybody's on this, pick your favorite video conferencing tool. Everybody's on it, right?
Yeah.
And, a lot of times you find people get on and they never even turn on their video, right? They're all, it's constantly switched off from the beginning of the meeting to the end of the meeting. Now, I'm not saying you should be, all the time. And it is quite, it takes a lot of effort to focus and, talking to the other person. But maybe some periodicity, you've got to turn it on because you've got to make your presence felt. Otherwise, you're a black box that everybody sees and nobody knows who's behind it. So you've got to come in, right? And make your presence felt. So that's one piece to it. But I think, people should think about how well are they communicating and work at it. Written communication, and then put yourself out there. Sometimes, there are people, I think nowadays there is no plethora of, there's so many places where you can go and express yourself. Get out there, right? And you'll get better at it as you go along. I guarantee that, right? And then and then how do you embrace the people around you? The diversity and inclusion piece that I talked about. How do you bring the village along with you in what you're doing? Whether it's your small work group, whether it is your larger organization, how are you bringing them forward? How are you communicating with them effectively and doing all that? And a few other things, just a couple of other things that, from a personal experience perspective, operate with integrity. I think you'll always be at a crossroads where you have to make a choice, make a choice that you're going to live with forever, right? That you're going to be comfortable with. And this is not an ethics lesson, but at the same time, operating with integrity becomes a very important piece because, those decisions will stay with you, right? Whether it's a people decision, whether it is something else, whatever it is, operate with integrity. And because that also gets known very quickly that somebody is, their own personal way they carry themselves. And then last but not least is pay it forward, right? Build good karma. Don't wait for constantly asking what's in it for me.
Sure.
Get yourself out there. Some percentage of your time spend on giving back, right? Of some sort. It doesn't need to be monetary. It doesn't need to be only social. It can be just working with another person in helping them on their challenges, right? Because it helps. I think it helps you to learn too, but it also helps the other person and, as a way of paying forward. And the underpinning of all this is believe in yourself. And I think that's a very important piece. I mean, all of us get thrown into scenarios, sometimes not of our making, right? These tough times, there's always that will come up, right? And last thing you can do is lose confidence in yourself. And so It's important to believe in yourself. Anyway.
So true. So true. So what I have gathered, couple of key things I just want to draw out is that executive presence is not something that only senior guys develop. From what you're saying, executive presence is right from the start of one's career. One looks at all these attributes and sub points that you've mentioned and sets an intent and conscious effort to imbibe and inculcate all these aspects. So that's something that's coming up for me. And you've said something that perhaps people may have slipped, is that it takes effort and we need to keep at it. Nobody seems to come with this entire, list of attributes or things upfront and say, I have it or I don't have it. It requires time and effort. It could be, like you said, communication skills.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, and it doesn't end. It's not like you do it one time and it's done, right? Because
Yeah.
situations change, your scenario changes. I mean, sometimes every time you change jobs, even within your company or outside, you have to rebuild your credibility with a new set of people. And so this never ends. I mean, it's not something that you just, and maybe it ends at some point, but if you're actively in career and doing things and involved, it never ends. I mean, you got to work at it.
Sure. And like you also said, the moment you start focusing on all these things and as they start coming together, it helps you get things done, which is what productivity, which is what ROI, everything is all about, right? Getting things done. So people with a better executive presence, a stronger, more authentic presence would obviously be able to get things done more effectively than compared to somebody
And, I,
who's
and I'll
not
give you
got
an
it.
example, which is from a few years ago when you and I,
Mhm.
there was a conversation that you and I had, which actually stayed with me. And you told me, you said, look, when you get into a new role, you get into a new job, the first 90 days are very critical.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you and at that time, I said, okay, maybe there is, and when the situation came up and I thought about it, and it was true, right? Your first 90 days is when your learning is the highest in a new role, for example.
Mhm.
That's when you get to also meet a whole bunch of new people. So you're building that network and the diversity of what you're doing, right? You are setting up some goals for yourself as short-term wins in some sense, right? To find your feet in a new position, new role, whatever you're doing. So it speaks to
Yes.
the points that I just made. And you're working at it because every time your situation changes, you again have to, you're reframing yourself and setting yourself up for a new set of things. And it's very critical, right? So I would say, so my takeaway out of that, the way I have imbibed it, is I treat everything in 90-day windows, maybe a rolling
Mm,
90-day windows, right?
how cool.
Because, think about it, 90 days ago, we would not have thought of the situation that we are in today,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
March
Yeah.
25th, I think, was the lockdown date, right, when it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
On March 23rd, I don't think we thought we'll be what we're doing. None of us knew how things would play out, right?
So true.
So,
So true.
so if I look back the last 90 days, there's been an immense amount of learning and adjustments and agility in our thought process. So anyway, so that's that's a small tidbit on a conversation that you and I had many years ago. So
So true. Thank you for remembering that. And 90 days ago, we wouldn't have thought of, we'd have just thought of executive presence. But today you've pointed out that there is actually executive presence in the virtual world. So even though we may be on Zoom or whatever, we need to keep these facts in mind, perhaps even more so now than when we had the space and freedom of, not being under such a focused and concentrated
in fact, it
glare.
becomes even more apparent today because everybody is focused, right? When
Yes.
you had in-presence meetings, you could slouch around in the conference room with a cup of coffee on the edge of it and not get noticed in the meeting. Now everybody's on the same. You're seeing everybody in one line, right? And it becomes very, very important that you're bringing your work brain to the meeting. I mean, just because you're working from home does not devolve you from bringing your professional self, to the present. Because as we were chatting earlier, some of the excuses I hear is, "Oh, I'm not dressed well," or I whatever. And just because you're at home, sure, that gives you a certain amount of abilities, but at the end of the day, it's not an excuse to turn yourself off.
So true. So Ram, I've got a good understanding of what are the elements and sub elements of executive presence. I've understood why it's important for me because as I develop it, it increases my ability to get things done and therefore my contribution and value to the organization. So now that I know what to do, some input on how do I start? How do I initiate an action plan, put this in motion for myself?
Yeah. So I think, I talked about a few things. I think the one is, I think it's a good time to step back and say, where do I stand on some form of a scorecard? What is my learning methodology? Each person is different, and each person has a slightly different approach to learning. What is my learning style, and where am I spending my time, right? And it could be on the job, it could be things that your company or gives you opportunities to learn from, etc. Second is, for the job that I'm doing, have I built enough of a requisite depth of understanding of what is required, kind of presence around it. Third is, how am I, if you don't have a good set of goals from a work perspective, have you built one, right? It's good time to sit back and say, you can follow the Google OKR model, you can follow whatever model you want, but building some smart goals on what people are, how people are doing, right? So I think that's very important. Do I have a good scorecard for myself in where I can evaluate this? How effective I am in communicating to people, right? Am I able to get my message across? Am I good at understanding the other person and communicate effectively about, the same topic can be communicated differently to different audiences. How good am I with that, right? And if you're not sure about yourself, maybe there's a time to, there are other mechanisms of getting that input from others, right? To say, how effective am I in my communication style? How embracing am I of others, right? A lot of times you kind of avoid the people who irritate you to some extent at work, right? I mean, you have those people. I mean, we all do, right? But the question is, how can I carry them along to get an outcome done? Can I manage them through my own influence? Can I manage them by influence? And that becomes very important. I mean, that is part of diversity and inclusion, right? It's, you may not agree with them. Of course, if there is some blatantly bad behavior, that's a different issue. But just because you don't agree with their point of view and not taking that into account is not the right thing. Am I building, if you're a manager, have I built diverse teams? Am I inclusive of those diversity? Building diversity is one piece. Including them into conversations is can I get those quiet voices in the room to speak up, right? And give their perspective and points of view. Be able to do that. I think these are the kinds of things that I would say, would be a good taking stock of where you are. If you're doing it well at it, great, build on it. Do more of it. Teach, get others to do it. So
Okay. And so how I'm doing all this. So how do I also become more visible? Because I find that many of us are little hesitant in going out there and putting ourselves in front. So how do I become more visible?
I think, there is good visibility and there's bad visibility. So let's leave the second part out. The good visibility is, there is, in most organizations, internally to the organization, there's a lot of opportunities to step up. I know that in my organization, for example, there's constantly opportunities to sign up to give talks, internal talks, right? It's good practice, right? You are within a safe audience. You can talk about things. You can tune yourself. Second, I think there is a lot of opportunities externally to make your presence felt. There are different forums where you can sign up to be a speaker. One of the things I did to get better at what I do in terms of communication is, I still do it, regret it later, but I sign up for talking engagements, which I don't know much about the topic, right? And then you feel the stress of, now I don't want to make a fool of myself. But that's a very effective learning mechanism. It forces you to learn, and it forces you to learn quickly, and it tunes the ability for you to communicate it, because you don't want to make a fool of yourself in a public forum. But it's a great forcing function, and you may still do it. You may still, first few times you may not come across as well, but I'll guarantee that over time you'll figure out a way to get better at it, right? Just because it's a forcing function. So that's that. Third, social media. I think there's so much of effective ways you can communicate yourself, from, expressing yourself, your knowledge, your thought process. Get out there. Don't be shy, right? Yes, you may get a few, if you're constantly looking for positive endorsement from your social media, maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't get it. It's okay, but do it because you want to do it for yourself. And that is another mechanism. People start recognizing it. People start finding it valuable, amplifying it for you, right? And then get you out there in doing that. So I think compared to 10, 15 years ago, the number of channels available for you to get noticed and get your presence felt it's quite high.
And the good news is that you can almost adapt it to your
Absolutely.
personality profile, right? So if you're more introvert, you can use more social media rather than attend meetings or parties or things like that. So those options are available. So, Ram, as we come to the end of our conversation, any closing thoughts that you'd like to share on the concept of executive presence? Or
See, I think one I would like to reiterate: the executive presence is not about the executive; it's about yourself. And second thing is, anybody can do it. Not that it requires any special skills that you have to develop. It is not that you need to be born with certain skill sets that are natural to somebody. Everybody can work on it and get to it. If you're not there yet, don't lose heart, right? Work at it. 3, you will get into scenarios which is sometimes embarrassing. Sometimes, you feel bad walking away because somebody didn't get what you did. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Those are all learning opportunities. Be open to feedback that's coming back to you. Imbibe it, take a retrospective view of what you could have done differently, and then incorporate it next time, right? It's an experiment. Life is an experiment, and how well you experiment through it is very critical, and be moving forward. Hopefully it's helpful for your listeners.
All right. And it is, I think it would put a lot of things in context, and most importantly, it sort of takes the myth and the legend aspects away and makes it a practical self-development type of a model. So I can now actually develop my executive presence. And one of the things that you have not mentioned is executive presence doesn't mean that one needs to look like Shah Rukh Khan or Kareena Kapoor, or it's got nothing to do with
No, it doesn't, because every individual is going to be different. I mean, it's not possible for everybody to look as if you just stepped out of a GQ magazine, right? I mean, that's not what it is about. But I'll say one thing: you got to be appropriate to the audience that you're going forward with. You can't, in business settings particularly, right? Certain amount of who you are and the trust building aspects is how you show up. That's not about your looks. It's about your, how you're put together, right? You show up in shorts and t-shirt for an exec meeting where everybody else is in a suit, you are going to look different. Maybe some situations may demand it. Maybe that's a way of sending a message. I don't know, but I'm not being judgmental here. But just like, for example, I'll just give you a tip, right? Before I go out to an audience, and I always ask the organizers, who's going to be there, right? And what do you think their takeaway is? What is it that they're looking for? And this is true for any audience. If you're walking into a room to a meeting, you have to ask yourself the question, who's going to be there? And what is it that they're looking for? And hence, how do I need to tailor the scenario to be able to be effective, right? And I think, to me, a lot of that is situational.
Yes.
And being situationally aware is, I didn't mention this as the long list of characteristics that I said, but situational awareness is very critical to be, from an exec presence perspective, because situational awareness will help you build the trust and credibility that you're looking for, and confidence that others will have in you. And so I think that's also very important, because then you start tailoring yourself to what the audience is, kind of looking to take away, and understand, the nuances of what to expect, and then hence how you tailor your message. So how you present, a certain scenario could be very different for the, one audience versus another audience, as you're coming in.
So true. So thank you. And finally, you said it requires effort, it requires time, and we have to keep at it. It's not going to appear overnight. So Ram, thank you so much for taking time to be with us. I think it's been very, very helpful in terms of, you've given it a very practical self-development twist on this concept of executive presence. And I'm sure a lot of our professionals are going to
Thanks again for having me on this.
So thank you so much.
All the best.
And that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Please connect with us on coachtoolbox@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and review this channel. Details of our ICF-approved coach training programs and our services as executive coaches and coaching supervisors are on www.globalcoachtrust.org. See you in our next session.